Before things kick off today, though, I did just want to take some time just to acknowledge something pretty devastating that's happened to the community today. We really lost one of the greats, the legendary John Blanche. So I did just want to talk about that first for a second, because I know, it's coming on a lot of people's minds right now. For those newer to the hobby who might not know his name, you absolutely knew his vision. John was quite literally the father of the grimdark aesthetic that defines everything we love about Warhammer 40,000. Over his monumental 4 decades at Games Workshop, rising to the role of art director, he didn't just illustrate the 41st millennium, he breathed life into its terrifying gothic soul. His art was completely unique. It wasn't clean or sanitized, it was frantic, expressionistic, and deeply chaotic. He famously avoided the color blue because he considered the ink fugitive, meaning it would fade into the daylight, which gave us the incredibly warm, visceral, and dark tones that became his signature. Everybody in the Warhammer community knows his image of the God Emperor rotting upon the Golden Throne. He painted the iconic Blood Angels cover for the 2nd edition box set, and then, when asked to paint the 3rd edition box set, he refused to paint the standard Space Marine chapters because he just wanted to paint Space Marines in black armor. So he looked through some early design notes, found a brief mention of the Black Templars, and brought their iconic look into existence, simply because he loved that visual of a Black Knight, and now we all do too. Beyond his official work, his deeply personal style spawned the Blanchitsu painting movement, proving just how deeply his creativity infected our community. There is not a single piece of 40k lore, no miniature, no novel that doesn't owe a massive debt to John Blanche's imagination. Rest in power, John, and thank you for the dark universe you gave us. Yeah, this one's gonna hurt. Truly lost a legend today. I think I speak for everybody when I say that artwork of the Emperor on the Golden Throne is, it's some of the most powerful artwork in all of sci-fi. You know, as impactful as the lore is, and the lore is so impactful, it drives so many people into this community. At the end of the day, I just don't really think the community would exist even slightly without John Blanche's work, or to us, many of the incredible artists who have worked for Warhammer over the years. And you can see it in the background, even in this stream, John Blanche's work there. It's just, it shaped so much of everything that we know and love. It was incredibly new and brave at the time, and it has dominated so much of like even today, so much of what we talk about, so many of the newer plot lines are unraveling things that he started all those years ago. And even just debating the lore around his artwork is like a whole thing. And so this one's gonna hurt, and rest in peace, John, and my greatest sympathies to his family. I imagine something will probably be posted online by Warhammer in the coming days, and I think even one of his friends has posted online today that they might do something in the near future to allow people to kind of show their support and care for his incredible contributions. But yes, I did think I would be remiss not to talk about that at the start of this live stream, because obviously it's on a lot of people's minds right now. However, let's move forward and let's talk about something else. So today I did want to talk about the new lore of Armageddon, which has dropped today. And this is the lore for the next edition of Warhammer 40,000, 11th edition. We're going back to Armageddon, and Games Workshop have released on their website an interview with Phil Kelly, who is now the one of the directors of the kind of the grand narrative of Warhammer. So an interview with him on what we can be excited about and what is coming, and the new factions in play. So I actually haven't seen this yet because I kind of want to do a live react to it, but yes, I'll be excited to hear what you guys all think. Right,
Adam and I sat down with Phil Kelly from the Warhammer studio to find out about the lore of the new edition of Warhammer 40,000.
Let's take a look. Welcome back once again. Eddie and I are now joined by the estimable Mr. Phil Kelly from the Warhammer studio. It's really nice to have you with us to talk all about the lore of Warhammer 40,000. Thank you for coming.
So, all right. gonna say this because like I think a lot of people will be thinking it. Phil Kelly is an interesting choice to put in charge of the big 40k narrative because his work is sort of a little controversial, right? So he has written most prominently I was gonna say the Tau books. It's primarily the Student of Puretide storyline, which is a very controversial series in that those books are eclipsed by some of the more popular Tau novels, and I think a lot of people can find his writing just a little stale over time. Now, in addition to that, I should say as well, he was in charge, I believe, of the Age of Sigmar narrative, which is now being squashed. So it's a little weird to have him be pushed onto 40k's grand narrative because we don't really know if his work is going to land that well. But I will say, in his defense, as someone who's actually read the Phil Kelly novels, he is very good at coming up with like a grand narrative. That is actually the thing he's very, very good at, I think. I think that the overall lore of the Students of Puretide is really good because you have Shadows and Farsight and Case, and those were really well thought out and really well put together. In addition to that, one of the problems that comes with his writing is that when the Farsight books are set such a long time practically before the kind of main 40k narrative that we have today, so even in the latest novel he's written, Empire of Lies, in that is catching up to the equivalent is like 7th edition of Warhammer 40k lore in terms of the campaign, and that really puts it in perspective just like how far behind the Farsight novels are. And that is always going to mean that those novels are going to be substantially less popular than the other novels that people might write about the Tau in the modern 40k era, like 42nd Millennium lore, where we've got a lot of development around how the Tau are surviving post Ornvar's death, what's going to happen with the Empire going forward. So I think that I'm hesitant to see him in, like, I'm a bit nervous seeing him in charge of kind of like grand 40k narratives, but I do think he is probably better than people think. Back to Mouse.
The Armageddon box set includes Operation Imperator, which is this fantastic hardbound book all about the lore of the Armageddon campaign. Before we jump into that, I was wondering if you could talk us through like how we got here in terms of the lore of Warhammer 40,000 and where we are in the setting at this point of time in the 40k universe.
No problem. Well, 40k, as we call it, is defined by this sort of onslaught of hopelessness and dark, grim atmosphere. Very jolly stuff.
With a happy smile.
I mean, it's just rich and,
ironic,
and cool. So we are in a place where already humanity is on its back foot. It's a dystopia. Everything's gone horribly wrong for humanity, but they're not giving up because they're too stubborn and they're going to fight to the last. And Armageddon is a good indicator of that, an exemplar of that. We've seen the galaxy split. So this massive warp storm called the Cicatrix Maledictum has come across the whole galaxy, torn it in two.
I love that even he struggles to pronounce Cicatrix Maledictum. That's genuinely pretty funny to me. Yeah, it's kind of interesting when people lean too heavily onto the humanity is dying and we're going to fight to the last idea, because it's not really clear, I think, to most of us that is the case nowadays. I've spoken about this before. Yes, it is definitely true that the vibe of Armageddon is definitely pretty dark, but it is also true to say that humanity does have a lot of hope. And that, the greatest example of that is going to be the Emperor of Mankind, and the fact that we just don't really know how powerful he is. So whenever people say like the Imperium is definitely doomed, I'm just like, yeah, I'm not so sure that it is. But certainly, like the vibe that they like to give is that sort of vibe. But the idea that humanity is for sure dead, I'm never too confident in that idea.
And on one side, you've got the Imperium Nihilus. That's where the lights are off, effectively. Mm-hmm. There are little lighthouses, but really the whole place is consumed by darkness and fear. And then you have the Imperium Sanctus beneath the rift, which is a little bit more sustainable, and there's still a good fight to be had there. But yeah,
this is pretty cool, getting a whole new map. In fact, I think I've got it. Yes, all right. I think I've got the whole thing here. Maybe I can zoom in a bit. Perfect. All right. So new map for a new edition, always very important. It tells us it gives us a bit of information like where some people are, and the things that are highlighted are always quite interesting. Hydrafoot, that's a Forge world. Terra and Mars, obviously. The Bastia subsector, very good to know they haven't forgotten about the Bastia subsector, because that is where the last great Tyranid narrative was coming from. So the fact that has to be dealt with is very, very important. But seeing all these kind of places highlighted in Imperium Nihilus gives me so much hope. So much, because Imperium Nihilus, if you're not familiar, it's such a big narrative event, of course, but it also can feel a lot like that's been forgotten about. So there we go. The Maelstrom, yeah, of course, that was a big narrative recently. Interestingly, Pariah Nexus is not one of the big ones. Oh, there we go. We've got Nephilim. All right. Oh no, sorry, it's there. Sorry, I missed that. Challenge expands. Yeah, it's a big kill team campaign, so no surprises there. But that's pretty cool. It's really nice to see we're getting more Imperium Nihilus kind of populated, it seems, and they're thinking more about it. Very excited for that.
It's dark times.
The word Sanctus does quite a lot of hard work when you consider how awful even that side of the galaxy is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You shouldn't be thinking of it as like there's a bad side and there's a good side. It's more like there's a bad side and then a really much worse side, and that's the way to look at it, really.
And so in the last few months, we've seen a few Warzone-centric campaign books come out for Warhammer 40,000, obviously culminating with the return of Yarrick. In terms of where the direction of the narrative for Warhammer 40,000 is heading, it's all pointing towards the return to Armageddon fully, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. So we've got these series of Warzone books. One thing we briefly spoke about was the idea that in 40k, the whole galaxy is embattled in one way or another, a million worlds in the Imperium, and all of them are involved in war or supplying war. There's nowhere that's nice and peaceful. And
there is only
war. Well, indeed, you could say that. So yeah, we've got these places that are particular hotspots, and those are our war zones. And we're going to spend some time looking at those as we go through the story of 40k and returning to them. And they're basically strategically vital spaces or places with a bit of history that we've invested in over the years, and we want to tell their story.
See that? Less exciting, right? Like, I think what most people want is the idea that we're going to go, we can go back to old places, but not just for the purposes of revisiting them, right? We want to go to new places because Games Workshop and Phil Kelly, they want to give us like brand new exciting narrative. So far, and I guess we'll see as the video goes on, but I haven't seen anything that's like, oh, here we go, this is going to be super exciting. Even the lore around Yarrick's survival was a bit lame. Like, it wasn't a particularly exciting return. Like, most fans, I think, had better theories for how Yarrick could have been resurrected than what Games Workshop came up with. And like, yes, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, but we also kind of want story. The reason Warhammer 40k is so big now is because of the story. Let's not just do lame, like, hey, we're going back to this place for another war for no reason. When people are seeing, Belisarius Cool actually try and create a new route through Imperium Nihilus, it's for a purpose, and like, it sets up like bigger things, and that's always going to be what people want. Ricardo, hey buddy, to be the devil's advocate, humanity being into death and hope existing are not mutually exclusive. After all, as long as there is defiance, there is hope. I guess that's true. I guess that's always going to be true to a certain degree. And certainly I think it's it's always going to need to be the case that every army can fight every army, right? That has to happen. One of the most common questions is, why aren't humanity and the Eldar allied? And it makes a lot of sense that they've got a lot in common, but they need to be able to fight on the tabletop, so that can never truly happen. But yeah, we're getting there. How was Yarrick returned? I missed that. So Yarrick, basically, he gets punched by Ghazghkull, and then the Space Wolves just use some medical aid on him, and he comes back. It was a bit rubbish, to be honest with you. And he's just back now. And so they thought he was dead for a while, but he's actually not dead. He was just like down for a while, and now he's fine. And that is a bit crap, really, isn't it? When can you get the new map of 40k? Was wanting to show friends, but can't find it. It is on the Warhammer community website. So yes, if you go to Warhammer community, it's currently the top article, but it's the article is entitled just the lore of Armageddon, which is what we're looking at now.
So rather than trying to do a million stories at once, we're focusing on these war zones, Armageddon being an old favourite of ours.
So we've seen the return to Armageddon, obviously, in the last book of the last edition of Warhammer 40,000, where Yarrick has returned. We saw Waaagh kind of come back to Armageddon. What happened there that kind of set up the events of Operation Imperator?
Good question. So Ghazghkull is the primo war boss of the Orcs. He is like the bossiest war boss of them all. Massive, great building-sized Orc of Doom.
Prophet of both Gork and Mork.
That's him, and he's my how he's grown, because when he was first a simple war boss, his story started by getting hit in the head by a bolt shell and being visited by visions. We don't know if they were real or maybe just being hit in the head really did it for him. Over time, we've seen Ghazghkull effectively grow in stature, literally and metaphorically, to become really like the king of all the Orcs, effectively. And what he has is cunning as well as brawn, which is really dangerous. Some Orcs are like not.
Come on, missed opportunity to say cunning as well as brutal. Come on, that was it was right in front of you, Phil Kelly.
Just strong and fighty and mighty beasts. They're also cunning. They know how to hunt. They know how to trick their enemies. And in Ghazghkull's case, they've got vision. They know how to effectively inspire the Orc race. That's what Ghazghkull is doing. He doesn't just want to attack Armageddon, of course. He wants to bring about a great war where all of the Orcs, and I do mean all of them, are kind of like infected by this urge to conquer the galaxy, to conquer the Imperium. It doesn't take much doing because the Orcs are already
quite excited.
Exactly.
Day with a Y in it, love to fight.
The thing is, they're not very organised, so they might be like super scrappy and up for a fight, but they don't tend to be facing in the same direction. They often fight amongst themselves if they can't fight anyone else. So someone like Ghazghkull is super dangerous because he can get all of the Orcs pointing in the same direction and fighting the Imperium at once, and that's doomsday scenario.
It's kind of the manifestation of that line which has appeared in Orc books for as long as I can remember, which is that, you know, they're super powerful, but because of the infighting, that power is essentially wasted. And were they ever to unite, they would have the strength to sort of defeat all of the other races, right?
Absolutely. And Ghazghkull is the likeliest.
I will say, if you're interested in Ghazghkull, you got to check out. I'll do a video on it at some point, but the new Ghazghkull book, Warlord of Warlords, is very, very good. You'll have a great time. If you like Orcs, that's where it's at. And that gives you a really great insight into what Ghazghkull is currently, his current philosophy, really, and how he approaches the Orcs. But you actually get one of the Orcs basically trying to usurp him, and how he treats him afterwards is genuinely fascinating. Ghazghkull in Mon 40k in that book is basically, I mean, he's pretty much indestructible. He really, outside of something like the Emperor's Sword, I don't think anyone is actually going to be able to kill Ghazghkull anymore. And it also does say that the loss versus Ragnar Blackmane was Ghazghkull letting Ragnar Blackmane win. So there you go for Orc fans. That's something we've all been wanting for a long time. So I think that yeah, definitely recommend that book if you are interested. And as it goes into Armageddon, I suspect we're going to see a couple of those characters becoming new models, new major characters. And seeing Ghazghkull controlling all of the other war bosses is one of the funnest scenes I've ever read in 40k, and they all bring like offerings to him. And it's obviously just like scrap and insane Necron heads and random Imperial trophies. It's a very, very good time. So yes, Ghazghkull completely broken now, I think, in 40k, and it's really nice to see Games Workshop actually sort of be more confident in doing that, because we want to see more Primarch equivalent characters across the setting.
Person to bring that about, he's doing it on purpose, even to the extent that his own war bosses, the lesser war bosses, Waaagh is a mighty fighter, don't get me wrong, but he's not really an inspirer or a prophet in the same way. Same for Nazdreg, who's more about personal gain. So you've got these larger-than-life characters that are kind of Ghazghkull's lieutenants, and he's bringing them all together and unifying them in a great war. And he's realized the best way to do that is to have a rallying call or plant a flag and have a place that brings the Orcs together.
So he's not necessarily trying to conquer Armageddon. It's more like a beacon to call all of Orcs into it.
Exactly, a war drum. We like to think he's banging that drum as hard as he can, and the kind of psychic resonance of that war, as the Orcs call it, which just means like an Orc crusade, is sort of bleeding out into the galaxy, and the Orcs are being drawn to it like sharks to blood.
See, that's where Armageddon is pretty well used. That makes me feel happier, because the idea that this has to be based on Armageddon starts to make a lot more sense, because Armageddon, if you're not familiar, used to be known as Ulanor, and it is the homeworld of the Orcs. And so the idea that Ghazghkull has chosen this world as the place to kind of do his rallying cry is not only utilizing his especially powerful nature, but also utilizing that kind of historic relationship with the Orcs, which is pretty exciting.
So that is why we're seeing literally billions of Orcs converging on Armageddon. It's going to be rather tough to stop that from capsizing the planet entirely, but the Imperium is not beaten yet, and the Space Marines have arrived, so there's still a fighting chance.
You talked a little bit before we went live about the idea that previously they used to kind of mark the epochs of Armageddon's war by saying like the second war, the third war for Armageddon. But at this point, they've sort of stopped counting because the war hasn't stopped.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is it. Ghazghkull's after a sort of perma-war, really. There is no escape. That's a theme we tried to get across in Return of Yarrick. The idea that Armageddon will pull you back in. You can leave the planet, you can go off on a crusade, but it's going to pull you back in. And we've seen characters like Commissar Yarrick, for example. He really does want to effectively retire or just have a peaceful death, but Armageddon's not done with him yet. Same for...
Do people in 40k know? So some people in 40k will know, yes. It won't be widely known because, of course, Inquisition, lots of hiddenness, but there's some people will know about it, definitely.
The Blood Angels, same for the Space Wolves. It's pulling them back in again, like a kind of whirlpool or vortex, and there is no escape. And Ghazghkull wants it that way. He doesn't want to win and flatten the planet completely. He doesn't want total victory. It's kind of boring for an Orc. An Orc wants a fight. So he's trying to essentially...
The fight that never ends.
Yeah.
So
that's it.
Yarrick alive almost as the kind of main attraction for the other Orcs to show up and have a go.
Precisely.
And so I think it's both expanding on that. So it's not just that Ghazghkull wants a fight. It's not just like excitement around having a scrap that Ghazghkull is leaning on. Ghazghkull specifically understands what he is, right? And this is really quite an impressive thing about the character in the novels, in that there's a point in one of the novels in Grotznik where he speaks to Grotznik, the Mad Dog, and Grotznik realizes that Ghazghkull understands what the warp is. He understands that Gork and Mork, for example, are not like the gods of the Orcs, as in they created the Orcs. Ghazghkull understands that Gork and Mork, if they exist, are reflections of the Orc consciousness. Now, that is something that, like, we the readers know that, but the characters in 40k, that is not widely known. So Ghazghkull has an intrinsic understanding of how Orc, not just physiology works, but also the meta-physiology of the race works. And he is described as like the bucket of the Orc. So he is, in the book, it says he is the green, which is what they call the warp. He is the psychic center of the entire Orc race. And so when Ghazghkull does these kinds of things, he's not just looking for a fight because he wants to like train his boys to be better or because he enjoys the fight. It's because he actually understands that he needs to create enemies who will challenge him, that will make him more powerful, and therefore he will ultimately become, he will grow in size, he'll grow in stature, and he will become the most powerful Orc that has ever existed. And so his understanding of how Orcs work is fundamental to his kind of actions here, because like he's literally training the Imperium so that he can become more powerful, which is wonderfully 40k. Robert, welcome to the channel. Keelan, member of 27 months, thank you so much. There are no Dark Angels in Armageddon. Why? Not anymore. So there were Dark Angels in Armageddon in the second War of Armageddon. There have been Dark Angels. So you can absolutely buy the new box set and paint the banner. You'll be fine. But yes, in this campaign there won't be. I think it makes sense. The Dark Angels are pretty much the other side of the galaxy. If we have a look, the Dark Angels right now, as far as we know, I don't know if the rock is they've actually noted the rock down here. No, I don't think they have. But yes, according to the most recent lore, the rock is all the way down near Ultramar. So that's where they're going to be doing. And also the new Cronus campaign, which is going to take place on the other side of the Great Rift, that's also going to be a big Dark Angels narrative. So I think the Dark Angels have got enough going on. But yeah, as excited as I would be to see them, I'm kind of fine without it. We should be getting a lot of Dark Angels lore. Rob, first Trazen needs to return, just saying, let's see Corvus Corax return to keep the Lion and Gilliman from strangling one another. Yeah, that's fair. To be fair, I don't know if it has to be Corvus Corax. I think that pretty much most of the remaining Loyalist Primarchs that are yet to return would be a calming force. There isn't actually too much bad blood as far as we know, between Loyalist Primarchs. You know, maybe Dawn and Gilliman post the Scouring will be worse than Gilliman and the Lion. But actually, from the lore we have, most of the Loyalists will get on reasonably well. And so they could, if Gilliman and the Lion do come to blows or nearly, then I think they could perhaps put a calming hand on a shoulder. Latest rumour engine is of Corvus's new models. Oh, sarcasm. All right, fair enough. We'll see.
And that's the scary part, is that he's got the brains to not only think of this as a plan, but actually make it happen as well. So that's why Ghazghkull is a particularly scary war boss. And if you look at the model, you're also like, yeah, he's going to crush you. I mean, yeah, you struggle to fit in this room sort of size. So yeah, Ghazghkull is a mighty villain for our story for sure.
So we talked about the villains. What is Operation Imperator? What are the Space Marines doing?
So it's important we kind of cover a little bit of how Armageddon started to rally. Right, so the Orks were absolutely thrashing away at the planet. Chaos got involved as well in the fire wastes. There was a story there to do with the Grey Knights, and just for a while it seemed like maybe Armageddon had won a reprieve, and that was beginning to look around in the dust and go, "Hang on, did we survive? Are we still alive? We could win this." Nope, because it's 40k. So unfortunately there's no happy endings here. Ghazghkull has now invaded and used a special kind of technology to do so. So you asked before about how did this happen? Ghazghkull has invented, or his big mechs, which are like super scientists, Ork scientists, has invented a mega teleshocker, which is a kind of teleporting machine that can swap objects places. And by objects, I also mean planets, asteroids, spaceships. It's this colossal monstrous
sort
machine.
Of tech that only an Ork could even imagine could be possible.
Yeah,
right?
and of course, I hasten to add, it goes wrong more than it goes right. The
only takes
cost
one
in
success,
lives,
though.
Yeah, well, exactly. The cost in lives of using this thing.
There's always more boys, though.
There's always more Orks and more scrappy spaceships. And it's actually made of effectively lots of spaceships with this technology that come together in a great ring, and they can teleport through the resultant ring of energy between those spaceships, the mega teleshocker. Ghazghkull and the guys are like, wow, this is actually working. I can't believe it. And so they're capitalizing on that by throwing as many Orks, fleets, rocks, asteroids as they can Armageddon. And it's enabled them to bypass a lot of the defenses and the cordons that the Imperium have put in place. Horrifying moment for Team Astra Militarum. Those are the kind of poor bloody infantry and the soldiers on the ground, as suddenly their planet is invaded 3 times more Orks than they were expecting. Waaagh being... We mentioned Waaagh, the kind of Ork war boss on a bike. He's like a biker psychopath, and he led the attack in return of
heralds the Speedwar, the sort of initial sort of shock invasion, and that's the thing that sort of catches them flat-footed to start with, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, Waagh's goal isn't quite the same as Ghazghkull's.
I really like his story.
I mean, cool. he wants to cross the galaxy and burn a path right the way across the galaxy. What self-respecting speed freak can say, like, you know, they're all following this guy. He's not really a natural leader in that he doesn't rally the troops and give speeches. He just drives fast and hard into the biggest monstrous titan he can find. But the speed freaks follow him anyway, because lead by example. So Waaagh was more than happy to make a bargain with Ghazghkull and lead the assault on Armageddon in exchange for being then hurled
a good go on the teleshocker, right?
Exactly, through the teleshocker into the next leg of his galaxy-spanning crusade. He's probably not going to make it to the other side, but you know.
Do we know where he ended up?
He's just living speed.
We established that.
Well, right now he is on Armageddon, so he has yet to further his journey.
Earn his free ticket.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's great to see that guy leading the charge. There's a really heavy kind of vehicular element to Armageddon. So it's such a hostile planet. It's so poisonous and toxic that really you want to be inside a Chimera if you're going to go out there into the wastes. Chimera being kind of a big armored, sort of fully sealed tank, is even amphibious. And Armageddon's home legions are famous for using lots of these vehicles. Iliman Ras, Rogel Dawn tanks. Armageddon makes a lot of tanks. It's one of the reasons. It used to. Well, it's still churning out a few, but yeah, it used to supply
it doesn't make so many
raw material to the sectors around it and even further afield. It's like a breadbasket for like military machines and ammunition, which is one of the reasons it's so vital.
Well, one of the original kind of Speed War army concept actually was on Armageddon, wasn't it? One of those very earlier expansions for Armageddon back in the kind of early 2000s, which I think you had a hand in, didn't you, Phil?
Yeah,
way back then.
It was a long time ago, but yeah, we did these things we called variant army lists, and one of them was the Cult of Speed, one of them was the Armoured Company for the Steel Legion, and they were great fun because you got to basically take an existing force or faction and then break it into, here are some specialist forces from that faction, Cult of Speed being a real gimme, because orcs on bikes are cool, or trikes or war tracks, or any number of variants, and Cult of Speed enabled our customers to collect an army which was just bikes, trikes, war tracks, war buggies.
It's quite a common concept now, but at the time they were quite revolutionary. The idea of like having a Black Templar's army that played very differently, or having a Speed War that played very differently from a normal orc.
Why is Armageddon so important? So Armageddon is so important for a couple of reasons. A, it is like the old homeworld of the orcs, but it's mainly for what it produces. It just produces so many resources for the Imperium. Like they said, it produces so many vehicles. It produced the Armageddon Steel Legion. It's very well positioned within the galaxy. So it's just it's just a very famous fortress world within the Imperium of Man. And given that both Chaos and the Orcs have constantly tried to take over it, it looks like the Imperium knows their right to defend it so heavily.
I mean, that's now kind of par for the course at this point.
Yeah,
it was really exciting at the time.
I think if Armageddon is lost, which might be how the edition ends, maybe that's how it should end. I don't think it wouldn't be a particularly large nail in the coffin. I don't think. I think that the symbolism of it may be devastating, but I think the Imperium could definitely survive.
Remember, it was just a lot of fun.
Too right. So yeah, that has a bit of history and a bit of provenance to it, that Cult of Speed, and a bit of joy. I just love the idea of orcs just trying to race each other to the front lines.
There should be a White Skies book where they go up against Ghazghkull. So during Vigilus, you got this a little bit, where you had the Dark Angels have their Raven Wing, which is all bikers. The White Skies had their bikers, and then you had a Speed War as well. So you did sort of have White Skies versus Speed War. In fact, there was a whole game built around it. I never played it, but there was like a mini game you could play where I think you could just play. Maybe it was just called Speed Freaks, but you had like a model version of Speed Freaks.
More interested in who gets there first than any kind of strategy or tactics.
It does tend to knock over the army that's in the way, though, doesn't it?
That's true, yeah. So I think Ghazghkull just kind of like, let Waaagh get on with it. Go on, just cause some chaos. Get out there. Yeah, exactly. You couldn't really yoke him to your cause. He's too much of a wild card. But yeah, so he was a great person to unleash on Sebastian Yarrick and his armoured legions during the events of Return of Yarrick that led up to this.
People so rarely say his first name.
As I described, the orcs have invaded en masse. The Imperium needed to get a call out to the Space Marines. It needed to say, we're under attack in a big way. We weren't expecting this many orcs this quickly. Please help us.
And the Imperium said, best I can do is 3 men.
But unfortunately, the orcs, being cunning, had learned of this and learned that they could shut down the astropathic choirs and kill the communication centers of Armageddon to silence the planet, to stop them from calling. Some of the more cunning orcs thought that was the way to victory and get the Imperium on the back foot straight away. But Yarrick, through a cunning ploy, managed to essentially use a decoy to get to the final astropathic choir and get the message out, picked up by none other than Marneus Calgar, chapter master of the Ultramarines, and his Space Marine Council.
What a guy.
He's been slowly amassing Space Marines to his cause as a result, and as a result, Operation Imperator has begun, which is where this comes in.
Awesome. So you've talked about Calgar and this Council of Space Marines. Who turns up to the relief of Armageddon then?
Well, quite a lot of folk, as it turns out. The Space Marines know that this is a vital world. We talked a bit about its strategic value for making war material, but also there's kind of like a propaganda morale value as well. They can't really afford word to get out that Armageddon has
Everybody
fallen.
knows you're fighting for it. You can't be seen to lose it, right?
Exactly. And I think the Space Marines also, they're quite proud.
It's like an honour thing, though.
Yeah,
isn't it?
exactly.
It's like if you fought for 10,000 years and everyone knows that your chapter fought for 10,000 years to hold this planet, and then all of a sudden
So that's what I don't think that is going to be where Titus goes, mate. I think Titus is going to stay probably away from this. I think he will be more connected to the Gilliam and Lion reunion, which will. I think we can be pretty confident it's coming next edition. I think Games Workshop heard it cool.
that day, were you? Yeah.
Right, that's it. So they're going back to defend it. Blood Angels, as we know, have been involved on Armageddon several times before, as have the Salamanders. Salamanders are stalwart defenders of Armageddon. We've got some Space Wolves are there as well. Space Wolves are there in numbers. The Black Templars, as you mentioned, Eddie, they've been there since the early 2000s. So we're bringing in some old defenders and old favourites. One of the things we're trying to do here is essentially revisit a classic, because we think this is a classic piece of 40k IP and we really enjoy seeing the Orcs take on the Imperium. But those aren't the only, it's not just the first founding chapters. We have literally dozens, and they are listed in this book, of other chapters involved.
It's one of the things I've enjoyed as I've looked through it is I remember in the original Armageddon campaign, you worked on it, the supplement that.
Chat, who do you want to see at Armageddon the most? Who do you think is who are you most excited to see take on the Orks? I think anything that involves the Marines Malevolent is going to be a good time. It just will be.
It came out for that. It listed all the different dispositions of forces, and there were loads of chapters, some of them you'd never heard of before, turning up, and it was like a company here or a demi company there or whatever. And as you read through Operation Imperator, you see how few some Space Marine chapters have been able to send, a couple of squads from one chapter or whatever, whereas others have been able to turn out entire companies. And it gives it this real Space Marine crusade vibe, the idea that they're just sending what they've got to have nearby or what they're able to spare.
There's nothing neat or ordered, really. I think they've just got everyone they can to rally. I love that fact. It gives it a sense of veracity, the detail, the granularity, the fact that it isn't neat and orderly. You're right, it gives it a sense of, I'm reading an actual account of a war here in space, and that is kind of fun. Orders of battle are great for that. You get titans with the names of the titans, strange Astromilitarum regiments that just conjure an image in your head, and that's how collections begin. We think
they are entire hooks for you to go, oh well, maybe I will do the 3 squads that turned up to Armageddon.
Yeah, right.
It did feel like a proper old school campaign book.
Absolutely.
Like I really liked looking through all the dispositions of the different.
The Ultramarines are in every campaign. Practically, it's because they're the poster boys, so they must always be there. Narratively, there's sort of nowadays it's easier to justify because Gilliman returned, and yes, he has reinforced a bunch of chapters, but the Ultramarines have been reinforced so much. They're so far beyond 1,000 Marines, and so the idea that they're a bit everywhere, it does work. It does work in 140k lore. Historically, I guess it would be more the case that they were more trusted. Chapters were more likely to work with them, so it kind of makes sense that they would be called upon. But it's mainly because they're the poster boys, practically.
Second founding chapters, and there's some really fun ones in there as well. I think there's definitely some inspiration to be had. It's nice to see some classics return as well.
It would be fun.
Oh yeah, any favourites?
I like the Stormlords.
Yeah,
so I painted my banner bearer.
Nice.
I got for the Armageddon boxed in Stormlords colour scheme. I also got a bit of a soft spot for the Marines Malevolent. Just because they're I just really like super evil, horrible Space Marines.
Still turning up to help.
Yeah, they're still there. They're killing orcs.
Helping.
Yeah, helping.
On their own terms only. Yes, Marines Malevolent is another deep cut there. Those were... yes, they possibly on the less noble spectrum of the Space Marines.
I really liked seeing the Crimson Fists were able to send some Space Marines to help, because they've got real orc problems of their own already.
And a captain too. Yeah. Well, I think the Crimson Fist will take any chance they can to get revenge for Rinceworld and for their chapter being thoroughly smashed by the Orks at one point. They have rallied. They have rebuilt their numbers. But yes, they are well up for a fight against their old foes, the Orks, for sure. And yeah, as you say, there are some nice little nods in there to older collections. We're really happy with the way this allows customers to basically put their chapter in there as well. So these aren't exhaustive, these lists. It's not like you read them and go, oh, my guys aren't on there, so I can't get involved. They're not exhaustive, and the Space Marines are rallying as time goes on.
That's kind of true of all 40k lore, though, isn't it? Like if you ever see an Imperial manifest, the Imperium is not as well organised as it would like to be, right? There are definitely Space Marines showing up for battles, whole Imperial regiments getting lost in warp storms and things like that.
So forced. I don't know if it's forced, to be fair. To be entirely fair, it is frustrating to people to have Ultramarines in everything. I can respect that. I think that you're right to say that Ultramarines are probably a lot more interesting than people give them credit for, but as a general rule, the idea that people just want more models for their factions, I think is fair. I think that's okay.
If it was an Armageddon, you go for it.
Yeah, or indeed any other Imperial force. It's a big planet, and it has, like I say, it's become a kind of...
kind of jarring how he keeps saying customers rather than players or fans. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. There's definitely a couple of times he said something, and I'm like, oh, that's a bit more like when they talk about we want to revisit this old IP. It gives more of a vibe of we want to flog this a bit more. It's not like we had this incredible idea, okay, of what if Ghazghkull returned to Armageddon and he did X, Y, Z. He built the biggest gargant that the world's, or whatever, something like that. That would be a lot more. That would be a lot more exciting. But it's more just we know that people like this and we want to sell models. And it's a bit more of that vibe.
like a magnet for all of the war
There's
forces.
even a shout out to a mercenary force of the Leagues of Votan, which
Yes,
are operating
indeed.
in one of the theatres, aren't they? And
That's right.
They're not entirely pleased with how it's going.
Well, I mean, the Leagues of Votan they're very much up to their own agendas, and they have their own metrics of success. So yes, I'm not sure I would trust them, but that's what we see as the story unfolds. So yeah, it's a big planet. It's vital. It has a lot of competence on it. So we do, towards the end of the book, we do talk about the other alien races and Xenos, the wider galaxy.
1.25
But
speed
really,
this.
the focus is on this
Apologies to people that like
particular
that.
theatre of war, or rather 5 theatres.
I like there's a little map that goes alongside each of the zones as well, so you get the kind of the hive or the equatorial jungle or something, and then you have this is where the Space Marines are, this is where the Ork forces are. Like just nice in a map with
You
an
love a
arrow.
map.
Like
You love a map.
this army's going that way. Something really satisfying about it somehow.
There was one project, we did 2 books, and we generated more than 50 of those, which was great fun. So lots of arrows. But yeah, there's something nice about doing this kind of forced dispositions and showing the kind of unfolding of a pretty traditional war when it comes to it. We are talking about lots
The
of
Orcs lose gigantic war they had
Indeed.
against Nids. You're thinking of Octarius. It's a pseudo loss, I guess. Like they left, but they still kind of got what they wanted out of it in a sense. Like they grew a lot more powerful.
But it's rendered in a
Narratively, not too
2026
much
way.
importance.
So as you can see, even by looking at the front cover, it's high def, super granular, really well thought out and well developed. I love that old stuff that we did in the early 2000s, but perhaps the production values weren't quite as high.
And its charms.
Yeah, indeed. But no, it's really good to show.
And it's the volume of content as well. It's a packed book with 120 pages, and that Armageddon supplement, the original one, was maybe 32 pages, something in that order. So you really get loads of stuff. I just want to shout out, we've talked a lot about the Imperial forces. The sections which detail the different Ork warbands are really quite satisfying as well. I think if you're an Ork fan, you might feel that you're sort of honor bound to have a force following Ghazghkull or Waaagh, whatever, but it name drops loads of cool sounding war bosses and different types of Ork force, and you could really see the way that spills out into collecting opportunities for you to like tailor an Ork force to your taste as well.
Definitely. One thing I really love about the Ork clans are, some of us know the Ork clans like the back of our hand by this point. The Goths, the Bad Moons, the Evil Suns, Waaagh, looking at you, the Death Skulls, Snake Bites, and the Blood Axis. These are beautiful, well rendered bodies of Ork nastiness that we've been writing about for decades, but they're so colourful and they're so well defined, much like the Space Marine chapters. So what you end up with is this really vibrant.
There's a sense of pageantry to it.
Yeah,
isn't there,
exactly. The heraldry, the insignia, which this goes big on, by the way. There's loads of cool insignia in here and iconography, which I think is exceptional. And it's really useful for you to be able to paint that on the shoulder pad or on the knee pad. It's kind of, if you want to get into it, to that degree of accuracy of what the campaign markings are, it's all in there for you.
We talked to the miniatures team, and they were talking about all the flat panels they'd left on things like the Ork half of the Armageddon box set, and there's a space on the banner for your your clan glyph or whatever. And the idea that you could take your inspiration directly from the book and really lean into that story is quite compelling.
Yeah, and the fact that we've also listed the units that are there. So if you're like, I would like to specifically have exactly the Marines Malevolent that appear in this war zone on Armageddon, you can go, cool, it's exactly these people using exactly this heraldry.
So this is the issue that you can have with these sort of books, though, right? Is that's kind of true if you play the specific company that is being referenced at the time. If you play Marines Malevolent, one of the other companies, you just don't know. And also, if they don't have those models, you just don't really know. So, for example, what color do the Marines Malevolent Eliminators paint should they paint their camo cloaks? Like they never like clarify. They should do. I think it would be a really good idea to do a better job of just listing somewhere on Warhammer Community how all these things should be painted. Because I love these campaign ideas, but they give you like a very small little snippet. Of what
So it can be very kind of pleasing to kind of follow the IP as closely. Or absolutely, if you want to just run off in a different direction and go, none of these are quite right for me, I'm going to paint them this colour and make it my own thing, and they're on Armageddon too, also absolutely fine.
Yeah, that's it. So it's supposed to be inspiration, really. Yeah. And if you follow your journey and want to stick to the rules, as it were, then by all means. But yeah, I think you and I, Eddie, we're more on the kind of like make up as we go along.
I like it to be a book, and then I like to go off book.
But I was looking I started this hobby painting Blood Angels for 50 pence a model a long time ago, and I'm looking at the
Painting other people's blood angels. Bless your heart.
Pro painting at the age of like 12 or something. But I was looking at all the iconography today, and I could feel that little itch in the back of my head going, I reckon I could do some knee pads and shoulder pads, and I sort of found myself really seeing it with fresh eyes today, effectively, which was a nice feeling. Yeah.
Cool. Is there a favourite part of Operation Imperator you want to kind of call out?
I mean, I'm going through an Orcs phase at the moment. I've got quite a nice collection of Orcs. I want to get that that DACA rig into my force as quickly
It's
as I
very cool,
can,
isn't
to
it?
be honest.
What's your plan of choice? Have you got like a
So
mix?
I've got some freebooters. I am thinking of going Bad Moons to go back to my original Orc collection, but I've got a freebooters collection that is all about scrap metal. If you imagine a scrapyard come to life, that's my Orc concept. And so the DACA rig's going to fit in really well into that, but also just sort of freshening up my units. You can take the Orcs and the Space Marines from this and incorporate them into your existing collections just fine, because they all fit together when you put them on the table. So yeah, I should be refreshing and
I've 1.25 the speed.
off my Stomper as well. Some of the arts in here
I
of
was going to say the art
Oh
there
my
is phenomenal
gosh.
as well.
the Gargants, the Stompers, the giant mountainous Orc
When we can
constructs.
see like an Orc DACA jet flying between the pair of Stompers. It looks really good.
And each of the war zones, each of the kind of the kind of
That's
theatres of
nice,
war in
yeah.
there has a piece of art that's kind of indicative of it, doesn't it? So you've got
right.
the great big one of the hives has been taken over. It's now like a
Man.
Gargant factory or something. And one of them is
But the art
basically
is
like
good.
almost trench wars outside the hive. So it's just really cool. And even within one planet, you've got this breadth of different environments. One of the things that's really fun about Armageddon is that even though it's a single location, there's an ice bit, there's some coastlines, there's some mountains, there's a jungle, there's a hive, there's ruined hives. So even within this one world, you've almost
like a
got
world.
whatever you battlefields want
the
to
whole
have.
planet
Yeah.
is covered in violence, right?
And so
from
well,
pole to pole, they're fighting
so well
everywhere.
explored as well. Like the map of Armageddon is one of those kind of iconic. I think I could almost draw it from memory. It's kind of embedded into my consciousness.
Yeah, well, no planet is just one biome, really, or like that's certainly in the 41st millennium. We try and get that kind of texture to these planets that we're invading, and yeah, Armageddon does that really well. I think there's some of these hives are like old friends now, like Volcanus and Tempestora, Inverness. These, some of them have been taken over by Orcs. So Tempestora,
Some of them are just a big
like,
hole
oh
now.
dear,
They're
yeah,
really
exactly.
good.
Some of them have been smashed and literally flattened by Orc rocks. Some of them are holding out, or maybe like Deathmire, for example, could go either way. We're seeing over on the other side of the in Armageddon Secundus, we're seeing a big Orc offensive there as well, and the equatorial jungle between the two of them that used to divide Armageddon Prime and Armageddon Secundus is on fire. So all of the because of course it is. A lot of the themes and the terms like Infernus and Volcanus give you that kind of like fiery feel, because it's sort of like a hellscape really. And yeah, to be there is a
It's a
death
hell of a
sentence.
tourist brochure, that is.
There you go. Yeah, come to sunny Armageddon. You almost certainly won't.
Haven't heard a thing about the 500 Worlds campaign. So you probably won't in this edition. You might get a page max, a paragraph maybe in the core rulebook, which might cover various campaigns across the setting right now. But what you'll get is a Kill Team box set or a campaign release, a campaign book released, that like the one we've just had, or 11th edition, where you revisit the 500 Worlds. And no doubt, the next time we go there, it will probably be, not no doubt, but the next time we go there, it will probably be the Lion and Gilliman reuniting, and Titus will just be there. So that'll be something. I also want to see Titus and Gilliman reuniting, as it were, because he'll have met him before whilst he was asleep. Does it count as meeting someone if they're asleep? I think it probably still counts, if you watch someone.
Won't get burned alive by. Even the orbit of the planet brings it close to the sun, Tisra, and because it's on an elliptical orbit, that means it has the season of fire. When it gets close to that sun,
Holy crap, a planet
it
with
gets
different
real hot,
biomes,
and everything's
Yeah.
burning and
Move.
simmering. Yeah, exactly. At which point there's kind of like a stalemate, even for the Orcs. They don't really want to be out there getting burned to death. So there's a kind of natural stalemate, which Ghazghkull is like, that's fine.
This is shaping up to be KD level importance. Oh, I would temper that excitement a little bit there, but I don't think it will be anything close to KD. So it was when Cadia split, the galaxy split. That's the relevance of Cadia, and they were kind of keeping a huge amount of the Chaos Forces at bay for 10,000 years. So I don't think it will be quite to that level, but maybe it will end up playing a much larger part, because if it looks like where they're going is that if Ghazghkull is successful, then he officially will unite 99% of Orcs across the galaxy, and that will be, then he'll push forward and maybe make a play for Terra or something else. But yes, he does talk in the new book. He does specifically want to kill the Emperor. He's going to have a damn good time doing it.
Let the
But the
Imperium
natural
rally.
drumbeat
Yeah,
of-
exactly.
of the
Let him
war.
get back
Yeah.
up again, just so we can punch
Is that
him
the
down.
moment before the bass
No,
drop
he
in the
wasn't.
next
Yeah, exactly.
As far as we know.
So that rhythm of war is part of what makes it appealing to the Orcs. Yeah, so there is a kind of cauldron of violence going on there. And yeah, it's good fun to revisit as a result. Someone like Yarrick, who's been involved, I mean, he is old.
He was quite old in the first
Yeah,
war.
he started off as the old man in the story, but he's had rejuvenate treatments, which is an imperial way to basically make someone kind of age better or give them a bit more
Artificially
youth.
extend the lifespan
Exactly,
sort of
yeah.
You definitely know that Yarrick is old because old is in his nickname. So, you don't get called. If they called me Old Sandman, then that's,
That's it. Usually for the rich and powerful, but if you're a hero of the Imperium, you might just qualify.
The figurehead for one of the most influential war zones in the galaxy. You might earn it.
You know, one of the things I love about Garrick is that he understands that.
Yeah.
He understands symbology and
the way people rally around him is
narrative.
more important than his actual influence.
Exactly. And like part of his story is that he took, he got his arm ripped off by an Ork Warlord in close combat, pretty baller in the first place, to be honest. Then killed the Ork Warlord and took his power claw and then started to wear it as a replacement for his own arm.
And voluntarily has his eye done too, because the Orc's like, oh, his look could kill. So he's like, all right then.
Yeah, he heard the Orc thought that his beady gaze could kill an Orc.
He's got a great PR team, basically.
I mean, yeah, but think about like the courage to then have your own eye cut out and replaced by a cybernetic, just to kind of capitalise on that.
It's that psychotic level of full-on sort of commitment to the cause, right?
Will he become a
he's
prime
at the School
or
of
a beast?
Regina,
I think he
he's
probably
been
will be
at the
called
job,
something
the
like
coalface
that.
of being a
I mean, he's
commissar
already
for
called the
decades,
Beast,
and he's just
so
his full
that's fine.
commitment, the way he rallies the troops in that.
That animation.
Yeah, but like even the stories, when he sort of defends the Hive City against all odds and rallies everybody, like workers and everyone, to the cause of protecting the homeworld, and that commitment it spans now not just decades but centuries, right? He's all in.
I mean, he should be dead. There's no two ways about it.
He just keeps rolling a 2 up, doesn't he? Every time he's like, I just made it again.
But like the Imperium and Armageddon won't let him down.
That's not good. That's you're not selling your project, and you're like, yeah. I mean, so Yarrick just keeps surviving for no reason. Does he keep surviving? We actually didn't write any lore for him that was exciting. He just survived. Like you're not selling your project if you're like, yeah, no. I mean, we just give him a pass because we wanted to sell more of his model. Really, like I think, yeah. Does that not tell you that that's a little bit wrong if you're doing it like that? If that's how you're talking about it.
That's the joke, really.
One of the lovely things about 40k is that unreliable narrator component to it. And so for a while, rumours abounded that Yarrick was no more, and the Imperium mourned him in places. And then his return for me is one of those. It's that fantastic movie moment, right, where the guy you've really backed for a long time sort of returns to the fore to do his heroic thing, and it's the greatest pairing, in my opinion, of Warhammer 40,000. Ghazghkull Thraka, this relentless, merciless, cunning, and brutal war boss versus the stoic tenacity and stubbornness of Commissar Yarrick, and they really personify something which is just magic in the way it's presented.
Yeah, it is definitely a rivalry for the ages. It's good to see that Yarrick, the new model, you can see he's got calipers and exoskeletal parts to his body because it's creaky and old, and he's probably in a lot of pain, but he just won't die, and that is inspiring. And I think in some ways that is like a microcosm of the planet itself. Like Armageddon has seen better days.
Yeah, and you can almost, because Ghazghkull just gets better and better, right? He's getting stronger and enjoying it more and more. And
maybe got his head cut off at one point, but he got better.
But exactly, he's bigger and more powerful than he's ever been, right?
Indeed.
Whereas poor old Yarrick is like held together with Juvenat treatment and like an exoskeleton.
Yeah, indeed. But he's still fighting, and I think that is inspiring. And actually, that is way more useful than another 200 crates of the wrong ammunition. Having somebody that is genuinely an inspiring figure like Yarrick, that is beyond value. So yeah, he's a great commissar and a great character. He's still a merciless old goat. I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of him, but yeah, he's an inspiring figure to the Astra Militarum for sure.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the chapter on the front of the box here, on the front of the book, the Blood Angels. They've obviously got a very long history with Armageddon. Tell us a bit about how they fit into the story of this world.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So the good thing about the Blood Angels is they are ferocious. They're not only extremely competent, but they love a close combat fight, possibly a bit too much, some might say.
How dare you, sir?
Indeed. And they are just as wrathful and ferocious and vengeful as any embattled orc. And so they can meet the orcs in even terms and quite relish the fact. I mean, no Space Marine shirks from a fight against the Xenos and the Heretic, but the Blood Angels got history here. They've got beef and they are back for revenge. So I think they're a really good foil to the orcs. They can meet them on even footing. More so, a Space Marine of the Blood Angels chapter is a ferocious close combat, very brutal, very strong, and yes, we'll get stuck in with shield bashing and headbutting and elbows to the face just as well as they will fire the bolter.
There's a narrative through line for them as well, isn't there? The Blood Angels have been sort of present in each of the sort of wars as they've flared up against the orcs on Armageddon.
That's right, yeah, indeed. So that's one of the cool things about this. I think the orcs know that.
How they got there.
And the orcs are more than happy when they see these drop pods streaking out the sky. The orcs rejoice.
Red ones, yes, red ones. We love the red ones.
Great cheer goes up. Yeah, totally. I mean, exactly that. They're probably not bright enough to know they're called Blood Angels.
But they know they go faster.
They know, they go faster, and they're up for a good fight. And we've got the long-running thing of some orcs who collect the helmets of the different chapters they've fought in.
Collecting Blood Angels helmets might be frustrating if you want a red one, though, because very often they're yellow or gold or blue, right?
Maybe that's good. You get a batch of different colours.
Maybe that's why they like it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so the Blood Angels are, and Captain Sandini is sort of leading the charge here. We've also got Eothras, the Ultramarines, he's been given an honour captain role, so it's a brevet rank. So it's basically because the
Fantastic. Like literally, that's the problem of the Ultramarines being in too many things, is that they've literally run out of captains. There are too many captains across the Ultramarines range who are named characters who they can't replace and move to Armageddon. So they've literally had to just invent a pseudo Ultramarines captain because they've run out of people. Fantastic. There you go. Maybe let's use a successor chapter next time, guys. Maybe let's consider that.
galaxy so large you can't have your captains everywhere at once, but you can have these sort of almost battlefield promotions or brevet ranks, such as honor captain, which means that he can guide other brother captains. So Tushan, for example, chapter master of the Salamanders, is.
What would have happened if the Ultramarines hadn't been there? Why couldn't you just have one campaign without the Ultramarines? Come on, guys. Like, you got the Crimson Fists and you got the Blood Angels. They're the two legendary box art worth factions. You know, Salamanders as well, of course, but like, you know, historically I'm thinking. So yeah, I mean, you just didn't need them.
Isn't there? You want somebody with a bit of weight to lead this kind of fight. Salamanders have got a big history in Armageddon, and of course, because they come from a planet that is so fiery.
Like for example, right? I think it's kind of lazy when Imani is Kalgar, when it's he that receives the call to aid. The Salamanders, one of their things is technology, and they have like ridiculous satellites and arrays. So the idea that it would have been the Salamanders chapter master, or maybe, you know, Vulcan himself, who, as in Vulcan, the second Vulcan, not Primarch Vulcan, if he'd received the call, that would have been awesome. But because it's like Marnie is Kalgar, you can't do a bit like, of course, Marnie is fucking Kalgar.
And Volcanic, they do just fine.
Quite at home.
They are. They really are. They're almost like, this is nothing to us. This is just where we come from, really. So they're a really powerful asset in this force. Ultramarines, of course, exemplary logisticians and planners and leaders. They're inspiring. They bring the Imperium together. Now, that's kind of hard to do because the Imperium is by its nature very disparate and fractious, but you might just get away with it if you've got the heavyweight credentials of an Ultramarine, the charisma and the foresight to make that work.
And do the Space Marines who have banded together to make Operation Imperator, do they generally get on? Is there like a unified leadership there, or is it like, we've all got you here, now do your own thing? Or...
I think they're united by a common cause, which isn't so much save the planet as deny the Ork. And I think, you know, because really the best they can do here is survive and maybe get some more reinforcements. They're fighting for time. I don't think they're trying to like save the crown jewels or like, you know, protect the buildings. They're really trying to just...
They couldn't make a Kalgar receiving a phone call model, though. Maybe they can. Maybe that's what they want to do. That's all they get out of this. Just one up piece of artwork or model of Kalgar just on the phone, and then that's why they've
stop the planet from, you know, stop the green tide from washing the whole thing away completely. So yes, that's the unifying factor. There will still be loads of cultural differences, dramas, confusion, arguments, shouting.
The Black Templars probably don't want to go where they're told, for example.
Right? Well, I mean, we already in this book, the Black Templars are like, we're just going to do what we want to do.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much.
Zero chill.
Yeah, indeed. And they see the fact that some people are exhausted or giving up or surrendering. They see that as heresy, as
sounds like heresy.
Yeah,
sounds like heresy.
Yeah, you're exhausted. What are you talking about? Getting back on that rampart. So there, you've got some really hardline Space Marines in there as well. So I think there is definitely a broad spectrum of defenders there. But yeah, the Blood Angels are. I mean, even this piece of art reprises an older piece which has a lot of classic history in 40k. So I think they are the iconic, I can literally use that term properly here. They are the iconic defenders.
Even some of their kind of like famous heroes and characters have been defined by their participation in Armageddon, right? So you've got things like Captain Tycho and Mephiston, who obviously became Mephiston, Grimaldus for the Black Templars, even Dante being famous for kind of leading some of the early battles on Armageddon. So all these heroes almost made their name on Armageddon, right? So Operation Imperator was maybe a chance for some new heroes to kind of rise.
Oh, very much so. And we've seen that with the models. I mean, every time I see these models in the flesh, as it were, I'm like, wow, that looks cool. Like, the characters are so good. Brilliant. So yeah, I'm hoping that these characters will become just as much a sort of household name in the 40k community over time.
Before we finish off, Phil,
you think that random Blood Angels characters and an Ultramarines brevet captain will become the household names in the same sense as like Mephiston or Kalgar? Come on, man. I don't know. I'm just sort of getting the vibe that a lot of this is pretty lazy.
Become just as much a sort of household name in the 40k community over time.
Before we finish off, Phil, obviously your team has been like passionately sort of telling this story. Is there anything that we've not covered that you think would be worth sharing about this Operation Imperator and the Armageddon story?
Yeah, so I'd like to just sort of say this is a really starting 11th edition with a great sort of explosion of cool information and activity that's a call to war. Get the box, paint it up, have a lot of fights on Armageddon. There's plenty of stuff to be done there. Mm-hmm. But I'd also like to say that we're going to other war zones over the course of the edition. We've seen some stuff from the 500 Worlds quite recently. It's a Fate of Ultramar, Marnix Calgar, Rabuta Gilliman. What's the score there? And so we're gradually following that thread as well. We've seen some stuff about the Eye of Terror.
Absolutely.
So, the Cadian Gate, what remains of Cadia and its defences as Perturabo and the Chaos Space Marines start to extend their influence in the Infinite Citadel. They're basically curtain wall after curtain wall across the galaxy as they're encroaching out from their place of power. We've got the Bastior war zone where we're seeing the Tyranids are really thriving to the point that Calgar has actually withdrawn a lot of his forces to get to Armageddon. So in leaving Bastior, they're dooming a swathe of worlds there to reinforce Armageddon.
Yeah, worlds no one's heard of, right? So it's kind of okay.
Well, if you live there, I mean,
I'm sure it can't go
wrong. But that's the thing. Over time,
yeah. Why bother going somewhere new? Why bother doing new lore? This is. I'll talk about it afterwards. But
we will build these up to have the same degree of cachet as something like Bastior, which is relatively new compared to the Eye of Terror, as these older war zones. And I'm really enjoying that because it means we can give depth to it. So we're not always starting with a fresh piece of paper. We're going back and following these stories as they move through the lore, as they move through the story of 40k.
It's also, in Warhammer 40,000, the wars don't kind of have clean starts and finishes, do they? This is a kind of era of perpetual war. You don't kind of start a conflict and go, right, the winner has been crowned.
Yes, everyone go home.
This planet's solved.
Yeah,
that's not kind of how it plays out, right?
Solved
These are
is not the
continuous
one.
war zones that have been raging in some instances for thousands of years.
Yeah, indeed. And we're really excited about the fact we can write big stories and small stories to dot our way between these. Maybe we can talk about that another time. But the idea is to sew all these narratives together into the fate, this grimdark fate of the galaxy.
You get this sense as well that the Imperium is kind of toppling between these multiple apocalypses. So you've got Armageddon, obviously, is this enormous Ork Waaagh that's happening, and you've got a Tyranid one over here and a Chaos one over there.
That's it.
And there's a Necron one down the bottom somewhere, and there's some other stuff happening all over the galaxy.
That's it.
So any one of them would be a disaster, but they're all happening at once.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Nowhere is safe. And obviously not much fun if you live in the 41st millennium, but quite good fun for us.
Awesome for us. Yeah, it's great. We get a war game out of it.
Superb. To me, this feels like an absolute love letter to one of the just the greatest settings that 40k has had. Right, Warhammer 40,000 back in my childhood was in many ways exemplified by the Armageddon War, and we've seen it sort of evolve. I don't think I've ever been more satisfied and more inspired by this setting than right now.
It's good, isn't it? I think the artists and the writers, editors, everyone that's worked on it has brought their A game and made the best version of Armageddon we've done yet.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's a
beautiful thing. And so we'd really like to have you here and nerding out with us about how cool Armageddon is. Thank you for the time.
We've just watched the video Games Workshop posted online where they go through the lore for Armageddon, the lore for the next edition of Warhammer 40k. And I think it's probably something we should talk about because I can't help but feel a little bit sort of disappointed in where it's going. When it comes to Warhammer 40k narratives, there is always going to be a limit into what Games Workshop can kind of do because they're ultimately about the new edition narratives are ultimately going to be about selling new models. But there's just a particular laziness that is apparent, not just from the lore that they've made, but also from just the way they talk about it in this video. And I just can't help but feel a bit disappointed. So like there's bits in the video where they talk about how like, oh, and obviously it's an Ultramarines brevet captain who is stepping up to the plate. And you're like, this is a war in which like when you say an Ultramarines brevet captain, that tells us that you've literally gone through Ultramarines captains. You've gone through all of them so many times because we've got the Dawn of War series, we've got the new Arios series, we've got the 500 Worlds, we've got pretty much every single starter box, and you've literally run out of Ultramarines captains and characters you can use. So you're just making new characters, and you just sort of think, why the Ultramarines really didn't have to be here? It's just sort of lazy. I need to structure my thoughts, I think. Like in terms of how this campaign is sort of sold by the guys talking about it, it really ironically, they end the video by calling it a love letter to Armageddon. It reads like anything but a love letter to Armageddon from the things that they've talked about. There's nothing really new that they've spoken about that's exciting in any way whatsoever. There's nothing that like is getting me really excited for the new edition. And quite frankly, they're just sort of rehashing old things to a degree that it's beyond what's necessary. There's always going to be a little bit of things that are necessary, but like you really could have pushed the boat out even slightly. Like the lore kind of starts off with this passage where like the reason the Space Marines are called to Armageddon is because, you know, Ghazghkull has returned and the Imperium sends out a signal, you know, requesting help. And of course, Marneus fucking Calgar gets that signal, not the Salamanders or anyone like that, not something that's exciting. Like the Salamanders, if you're not familiar, are a Space Marine chapter who are all about technology. You know, it's one of the things that they do best, perhaps better than any other chapter. They have just this incredible technology about them, and it's just so lame that like it's that kind of thing is attributed to the Ultramarines. And then when it comes to like the characters, which according to these guys they think might become household names within Warhammer, one of those guys is an Ultramarine brevet captain. Some of them are like the Blood Angels characters, and the reason that those Blood Angels characters are named is because they're literally the characters from the box art. That's what they're doing there. That's, you know, all of the characters here will have names, and that's sort of fine. But why in a campaign that features not just like the Salamanders, but a whole bunch of chapters that never get attention, why are you focusing on the Ultramarines so unnecessarily? It's just so lazy. Like the Crimson Fists get no attention, and they just should do. And like this, like the way they talk about this box, you know, they use the word like customers quite a lot, and they when they talk about the lore, they're not thinking like, oh, the big lore heads are going to be thinking back to this thing that happened in a previous edition. It's all just like there are Blood Angels and Salamanders and Armageddon. That's like before, right? But there's no actual pointing to previous lore. Ghazghkull Thraka has appeared in 2 pretty major novels that have come up in recent years, and the stuff that happens in those novels is just not referenced whatsoever. The Blood Angels are at Armageddon. They, like, just to be clear, the Blood Angels shouldn't really be at Armageddon. Like, it's kind of a conundrum, because how are the Blood Angels at Armageddon? They were on the other side of the Great Rift, and we had all this lore in Darkness in the Blood that explored the idea that Mephiston can kind of guide people through the warp. And instead of actually giving us lore explaining how the Blood Angels are actually there, they just say the Blood Angels are there, and like they reference Mephiston in an earlier edition of Armageddon, and you're like, the War of Armageddon. You're just like, but why? What is Mephiston even here? How are the Blood Angels here? You still haven't told us how the Blood Angels are here. Why won't you do that? I don't understand. Like, that's lore that's super exciting, and instead we just get the most like lame kind of like selling plastic lore you've ever heard in your life, and it's just not really an attempt to get people excited. I mean, like, you know, I wasn't going to talk about the models, but the models themselves are also a bit lame. I mean, just repeated intercessors with different heads, eradicators with heavy bolters. I mean, a lot of this is just kind of lazy. I mean, it's just not great, especially compared to the previous editions of Space Marine releases. And I'm just sort of a bit. Yeah, I'm not particularly hyped for this, to be honest with you, this lot. I think it's going to be a bit lame. They do a really bad job of selling, like, whether Armageddon is actually that important. Like, the main reason Armageddon is probably important in the long run is because, being the homeworld of the Orcs, if Ghazghkull is actually going to pull all Orcs, or near all Orcs, at least in like Imperium Sanctus, to his side, Armageddon is probably going to be where he does it. But they don't really do a good job of selling that, because they don't talk about the existing lore around Armageddon and how it's connected to Ulanor and like the War of the Beast. And I just sort of think it's just kind of lazy. Do you know what I mean? And like, I don't know, man. Like, I've read a lot of Phil Kelly's novels, and I think that he's often pretty good at crafting a grand narrative. Like, I think the Students of Puretide for the Tower are pretty well put together. But so much of this is it just seems so lazy. Like, they really, it just doesn't feel like they spent a lot of time on this. And like, I gotta say, like, the artwork is incredible. Like, when they go through the artwork, again, as usual, hats off to the artists. They did such a good job. I mean, some of these pieces are phenomenal, but so much of what they say is just kind of boring. And like, you know, when you just got the Ultramarines in there taking center stage for some fucking reason, it just kind of drives that point home. And like, yes, you know, this campaign is just going to be where another battle happens, but at least allow us to feel like there's some weight. Like, nothing that they've said makes me feel like if the Imperium lost Armageddon, it would be that bad. Like they don't really say it. They just, I mean, they produce a lot of machines. They produce a lot of troops historically, but then they forgot about the Armageddon Steel Legion when Yarrick returned. So like, how important is it really at the end of the day? I don't know. I'm not particularly hyped for this edition, and this video has really not helped me with this. When we went into it, I gave Phil Kelly like a bit of a reassurance, because I know a lot of people will be nervous about him. Like he was kind of in charge of Age of Sigmar for a few years there, which it looks like is being like half squatted, and now he's in charge of 40k, or at least parts of 40k, and a lot of people are quite nervous about that, because he's not written too much of like the core lore. He's written a lot of like narrative stuff, like Tau stuff, and like some random novels that haven't really done very well. And so, like, I thought, maybe what he can do is he can create interesting characters. But they don't really talk about any interesting characters at all in this. And even when they talk about Ghazghkull, it's the most flaccid, like, this is Ghazghkull, he's the biggest orc, and he's pulled all the orcs under his banner discovery. I'm just like, oh, come on, man, give us something. Talk about like the concept of him becoming a beast. Talk about the concept of him becoming powerful enough to take on a Primarch. Talk about his ambition to destroy the Emperor. Like, give us something to get us excited. And yeah, I mean, like they talk about the Yarrick stuff, and they talk about how Yarrick is so like important to them, and like it's just so amazing. But if Yarrick is important to you, why didn't you give him good lore? Why did you make Yarrick's return, Yarrick getting healed by some space wolves? He gets headbutted and he gets healed by some space wolves. And you're like, that is just, it's just kind of shit, guys. Like there is so much good 40k lore that happens in the novels that gets forgotten about. But then, like, I just feel like the people that write these campaigns and the people that write the novels, are you actually talking? Like Ghazghkull, like, ask Danny Flowers to give you some tips for how you should write Ghazghkull, because he writes Ghazghkull really well. He just released a book that's doing really well. Grotznik I think was my favorite book of that year. It does really well. Why are you making Ghazghkull boring? I don't get it. Like, it's just so dull to me. And like, you've literally fucking run out of Ultramarines characters. I mean, the Salamanders and the Crimson Fists deserve so much love, and you just can't do it. Like, it's just so, I mean, it's not even like you need to sell the box art. It's just fucking lazy. It's just so lazy that you've done this. And like, they talk about how it's like a love letter to the previous editions of Armageddon. How? It like copying the previous edition. That's like calling The Force Awakens a love letter to a New Hope. It's not a love letter. You just copied A New Hope. It's not the same thing. Like, you're just copying the previous lore. And like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just not particularly hyped. Anyway, but yes, it's just kind of boring. You can do something because you want money and put in a lot of effort to make something good. Yes, that's a good point, because I think a lot of people, if you're watching, you might be like, oh, well, at the end of the day, this is to sell toys, this is to sell models, blah, blah, blah. I understand how people say that. And like, for example, I can give you some credit to some degree. Like, there's a reason that the humanity and the Eldar can't ally, and that's because their tabletop armies need to have reasons to fight in the game. That makes a lot of sense. But you do realize that, like, the reason people buy Warhammer models is because the lore is so good. Like, the reason Warhammer 40k exploded is because Gilliman returned and people loved the lore. It's not because people liked Primaris Marines or contrast paints or whatever. It's because people liked the lore. So the lore is important to sell models. So the idea that like the lore comes second is just not true. Book sales might not be their biggest driver of income, but the lore is their biggest driver of income, and nothing comes close. Like look at Games Workshop itself. Age of Sigmar, the quality of the models is phenomenal. Like, I think generally speaking, it's pretty universally acknowledged that they demolish most 40k releases, but 40k crushes them in every single aspect. That there is nowhere Age of Sigmar comes close to 40k, because 40k lore is that good. So like, when people talk about like, oh, it's just a game, it's just the models, whatever, so like the lore they're never going to care about the lore. That's backwards. Like, they should care about the lore. It's the only reason they have any fucking money. Like, yeah. This setting is super important. Important things will happen, but if you want your chapter that isn't there to be there, just make it so. Like having Aztec fighting in the Battle of Austerlitz. I don't understand too much of the historical reference, but I understand what the Aztecs are. But yes, I get what you mean. Like it's one of those things. Like this is maybe this is the criticism of Phil Kelly's writing. It's like show and don't tell. Don't tell me that they're the smartest people and that this battle is so important. Show me why it's important. Explain in the book what will happen if Armageddon falls. You don't need to then tell me if the Armageddon is important. You can just explain what will happen, and I'll go, oh my god, Armageddon is super important. But so far, you've given me Armageddon produces a lot of tanks. Okay, great. But lots of worlds make a lot of tanks. Aren't the Ultramarines at the Prior Nexus too? They're everywhere. Are you going to tell me to get off your lawn next? All right, Mike. So they killed Chiron off screen for this. So true, so true. The Ultramarines should be busy in Ultramar. I mean, like, you can have the Ultramarines sort of spread out, but like this was so lazy. I mean, especially when it's about like receiving a difficult signal, when the salamanders are right there, especially when you need someone to step up to the plate, when you've got like the Crimson Fists who are Ork specialists. Like the Crimson Fists, if you're not familiar, the Rin's world was literally lost because of the Orks, and like they have come close to extinction twice because of the Orks. So they know, like in the previous editions of Warhammer 40k, they have had special rules against fighting Orks. That's how good they are at fighting against the Orks. And who is in charge? Some random Ultramarines brevet captain, which brevet captain means he's not a captain. It means the Games Workshop have run out of captains for the Ultramarines, and so they're saying that this guy counts as a captain. Fucking lame, man. Two companies of Blood Angels were Arcadia. That is how they're at Armageddon. I don't think that's true, mate. I don't think that explains it, because they would have had to go back to Baal to get reinforced. Let us pray. The God Emperor. They're being vague intentionally. There will be real details later. Yeah. Be crazy if they like let the White Scars or the Raven Guard take this one. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the aspects of the video that is just like so it's sort of amazing that it's so boring is because they talk about how important the Orks are to them and how much they love the Orks historically and like the power of them, right? But when they actually talk about the technology the Orks are using, they don't really talk about anything particularly exciting outside like this teleporter shenanigans they're able to do, which is like old Ork lore. Like it's not new, it's not exciting really in any way. And I just felt like, couldn't you have come up with something new? Like, you really couldn't have thought of anything new that the Orks could have brought to the forefront to actually, be able. Like, we don't see anything on Ghazghkull and Ork. We don't see near enough on like most of the Ork clans. So why couldn't you have done something around? Oh well, there's someone's developed a new kind of a squig. Someone's developed something exciting that we could have got behind. But like, you're just sort of rehashing old storylines. And don't get me wrong, it's harder to do than say. But like, this is your job. All this negativity, yeah, sure, it is a fair bit of negativity for me. But I'm just sort of disappointed, really. I think it's sort of like it's piled up, right? I saw the models, I wasn't that excited. I saw Yarek's return, I wasn't that excited. And I watched this video, and I'm like, this is dull. Like I know like when the box comes out, you're gonna get a bunch of YouTubers who, they don't read the lore out, but they rechange sentences word by word, right? And then they read it out, and you're just like, there's just nothing there to grip you. It's just nothing to engage anybody. I think that you'll have some maps which will be pretty cool, but they're only exciting if the lore behind them is also good. Yeah, even for example, they talk about the concept of Armageddon and how it's important it's been over the years, right? But like, they haven't even really connected this to the last war of Armageddon, which time-wise has taken place not that long ago. You should have the Black Templars and the Space Wolves there at almost Legion strength. Again, a massive thing that happens in the books, doesn't get brought up in the lore. And like you've got them there, they've just banished Angron by using the remnants of his own blade. You're like, oh wow, that's going to leave a mark. And like it just, I don't know, there's no reference to it. They just don't even talk about it. It's just sort of lazy. Like it's one of those things. I always like read the novels and I'm like, oh, this is gonna like pay dividends at some point, and like they're gonna remember it. But yeah, it is like they're just different fucking teams. Red Hell's Reach a few weeks ago, and they literally talk about being scared that the tithe grade will be lower because so much industry is destroyed, and they'll be left for dead when the Orcs return. Yeah, but then they just forget about that. Love to hear this because it's so obvious how invested and passionate you are on the subject. Whereas the corporate BS, acting like they even know the material. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, the corporate speak is it's just a bit kind of lame, to be honest with you. I mean, Phil Kelly isn't really he doesn't really write any of these factions. Like, he talks about the freebooters. He has written some freebooter lore, that is true. But like, I don't think the freebooters take much of a stage in this campaign whatsoever. So like, I would have felt much more excited if he had, like, yeah, if he had done something like that, that would have been really good. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just the most surface level fucking Ghazghkull lore. We need expansions of Eldar lore. Stay hoping for that one, man. It's a game at the end of the day. It is a game at the end of the day. I don't know. You can make more lore and create as many narratives as you like. Having room to do your own stuff is one of the best aspects of the universe. Yes, but that does. So, like, when people say that kind of statement, sir, like, I understand what you're saying, but like, what you say doesn't counteract anything that I've said. Like, it is true to say that it is just a game, and it is true to say that you can make your own lore, and that's a really cool thing about the setting. But that doesn't undercut the idea at all that this lore is kind of boring, in my opinion, and like, yeah, they should do better. I think that it would be so much better for everybody if they actually just made better lore. And so I can understand then, you know, why people feel like that. But like, most of the time people make this kind of statement, it's just sort of, it's not really relevant to what people are talking about, right? Like when people, like I mentioned earlier, when people ask the question, why don't the Eldar and humanity ally? The answer to that question is because it's a game and there has to be conflict between those two factions. But when I say this lore is boring, it should be better, and you go, oh well, it's a game, that is not actually engaging with what I'm saying whatsoever. Because like Star Wars make most of their money through selling toys, like teddy bears and stuff, right? So if I said that Star Wars is just about selling teddies, that's how the company makes their money. That's technically true. It's meaningless as a criticism, or as meaningless as a counter to the idea of someone saying this film was bad. The film still should be better. And the film being better would result in more toys being sold. This lore being better would result in more games being played, more games selling. Like that is, so it's not engaging really with what I'm saying at all. If the lore is being consistently mishandled, is there an argument to be made for splitting off? No, I think we're far away from that, mate. And I think a huge part is that like the novels and the campaigns are not interacting really. The big mocks of events are more sanitized lore-wise than back in the day, but for decades we got little to no lore progression. Lore didn't move forward until 8th ed, and only in fits and starts. True. But again, like that's not. You're right. What you're saying is true, but that doesn't engage with my criticism that this lore is dull. Right? Like this lore is dull. I think the Indomitus lore was much better. It was referring to the idea of the Indomitus Crusade. That was a huge deal. The Leviathan lore was much better. A Fourth Tyrannic War was a much larger deal. It is perfectly acceptable to say that this lore is boring and should be better. I understand that like there is a certain subsect of people in the Warhammer community that sort of dismiss any criticism of Games Workshop or Warhammer of like it's a game. But like, to clarify, you are allowed just to criticize Games Workshop. That is also fine. I mean, like, you get, you know, there's these YouTubers that just talk about Warhammer's a game, in the day it doesn't matter, but they just remake their Iron Warriors video 3 times because they're like, won't talk about anything else. And it's like, hey, if it's just a game, why are you doing this? No, guys, don't attack the multi-million-dollar company. I think the thing is, like, there are times that people insult Games Workshop. I'm like, not really. Like, you kind of, you know, I'm not really buying it. But like, when someone just criticizes the law, like, that's not the same thing at all. There's you know, if someone if someone makes a law decision that like a small number of people don't like, then they're just kind of, and they're like, Warhammer's ruined. Then you're like, well, you're going a bit far there. But like, this is just my opinion that the law's kind of dull, and why I think that's important. And people, if you just respond with just like, but it's just a game, man. It's, I mean, technically true, but meaningless. Keep bashing GW and you'll be living in the 15th century again. Isn't GW like half of your GDP? True, it is a half our GDP, but that's why we need it to be better. They should have law interact with books and tabletop within a 3-year period, and each edition should have both link up. I think that, like, it's just like, I guess it's just sort of the laziness of it. It just feels like they just could be better. I just feel like the things that I'm requesting are not massive, right? Like, you should. If you're going to have a big campaign based around Ghazghkull come out at the same time as a big book based around Ghazghkull, maybe have those 2 writers, maybe have them talk and try and plan things and tie them together, so you kind of get rewarded for if you've like read the novel. I think that would be really cool. And like, if you're going to have, like, if you don't need to make everything about the Ultramarines, don't make everything about the Ultramarines. If you're going to make a huge deal about a character dying and then coming back to life, maybe be a bit more innovative. And if you're going to try and do like homage to a previous edition of Warhammer 40k, like, bring something new. Don't just repeat it. You know, it's the same. It's a Force Awakens type situation there. That's all Armageddon 2 is to me. Armageddon 4. Thanks, Mike. Is Abnett not head of law? I would have thought that Chris Wright, or ADB would be rather than Phil Kelly. So the titles are, there are a bunch of like weird titles like that amongst the writers. I think Dan Abnett is typically seen as like the head, but like he doesn't. I don't think he's basically too busy to do like these campaign stuff. It feels like they had a lot of great ideas in mind, no idea on how to connect them together. I don't know, man. I even think that's a bit generous. I feel like they just felt like I feel like they couldn't think of a place to set the new campaign, and so they just went, you know, wow, let's just choose Armageddon. And like a lot of it is just sort of heartless, right? Like, you know, when they talk about the Ultramarines, and you're just like, even in the video when they talk about it, you can tell that they know that the Crimson Fists need some love and the Salamanders need some love, but then they're like, yeah, and then like this random Ultramarines brevet captain, he's going to be a household name, and you're like, man, I don't think most people in the Warhammer community know who Arios is, and he has appeared in multiple novels, he has his own series, and he has a model. Like, there's just too many Ultramarines, man. Gilliman is good at showing up at the end of a big fight. The law has to be strong to make people engage in the game. Make the law stupid, and let's see how sales go with it. It's a game statement was not pointed at law criticism. It's a basic narrative to overwhelm new players. It's to not overwhelm new players. The business aspect has superseded creativity and can disenfranchise hardcore fans 100%. Has superseded hardcore fans 100%. I see what you're saying. I get where you're coming from, mate, but I don't think that is true. All right, I don't think a lot of what you're saying is true, or really the things that I've said would upset that. So I get where you're coming from, in that like you could make a campaign that was reliant on you having read 6 other novels, and therefore new players to the hobby were completely confused by it. But I think that the standard of what people can take is a lot higher than the sort of way you're talking about it. Like Istvan 5 is the basis of the new Horus Heresy campaign. People are flocking to it in droves. Armageddon is not that complex. Like, just to clarify, even if you know nothing about the other wars of Armageddon, this lore is just, you're up to speed very quickly. Like, this is a war the Imperium has had to defend many times, and the Orcs have now attacked it again. And you're like, cool, I'm good to go. The idea that you can't bring in anything else is just sort of dull. Like, for example, I mean, a lot of things I'm talking about, the idea that, like, they're bringing in Marneus Calgar instead of, like, Tushan. Right? Why didn't they do Tushan instead of Marneus Calgar? If anything, you're bringing in an extra character unnecessarily. It's just sort of like, I don't know, it's just kind of lazy. But like, I can totally understand where you're coming from, but I just think that, like, yeah, I feel like the things that I'm saying, like the things that you're saying, are not really tackling what I'm saying. After retiring at 58 years old, I think I look forward to the most during the week are your live stream twice a week. Oh, thank you so much, man. I mean, hey, I appreciate that. I should say, you know, if you are new to the channel, I don't often talk rant like this, which I do think I should say. I think that gives me a pass, right? You guys watch this channel, you can watch everything. I read every book, I read every campaign, I talk about as much as possible. I'm not somebody that goes live every week and I just bitch and complain about Games Workshop. So don't pretend I'm that guy, because I am not. I'm not even fucking close. So like, if I have an actual complaint, it's because I feel it. And I'm like, generally speaking, my feeling is like, I found that boring, and I think it is going to be quite boring. We'll see. You know, to be fair, there is a caveat that we'll see how this lands when the rest of the lore comes. But given that Phil Kelly couldn't bring up anything that he was really excited about outside of an Ultramarines brevet captain, then I'm not particularly hyped. Let us not pretend that the new players of Warhammer 40k are 12-year-olds like 20 to 30 years ago. I mean, like when people are young and they get into Warhammer, I just don't think everything has to be dumbed down to some absurd degree. Do you know what I mean? I think that like, yeah, it is definitely technically possible, right? The previous commenter, Fanto, like he's right. There's like an idea, like it's definitely a valid idea that you don't want to make lore too complex for a new edition that would overwhelm new players, and they're like, I'm out. Lore's too complex for me. But just to clarify, when you walk into a Warhammer store, there's like fucking 50 different factions in your face within the first 3 seconds, and so like the idea that there's a lot to go, like the idea that lore could overwhelm people, I just don't really think it comes to that degree. I think that like the things that I'm talking about are like the way that the Fall of Cady campaign didn't forget about the 12th Black Crusade, the way that they kind of brought things through and that kind of thing. It didn't fuck with people who were old Warhammer 40, that were new Warhammer 40k fans, but it was still super engaging and like gave you a little rewarding thing if you'd read those. So it was just, yeah, that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. And I just think that yeah, I just wish that there was. I wish I just got like a preview of these things, and I could be like, you know what, when I watched that video, you know, and they're talking about Ghazghkull, like as I was doing in the React, there's bits where they talk about Ghazghkull, and I'm like, and you want to know why that's super cool? It's because this happens in the book. I'm like, I just wish they had someone who was going to do that. Just wanted to bring in a little book stuff here and there, and like, yeah, I don't think you'd risk it being too complicated. I understand what you're saying. I'm just playing devil's advocate. Well, I do appreciate that. For the 14-year-olds like my son who like the setting but get lost with multiple plot strands, just a thought. But I get your point. Yeah, I mean, it's I can understand. Another, I can't say that is completely impossible. But I'll be honest. I think I have more faith in the 14-year-olds of this country. I back them. I reckon they could have handled this book not having Ultraprints in it. I think they would have been fine. Like, I'm really not asking for this to have been the Siege of Terror 2.0 or 3.0. I'm really not asking for that. I really just think it would have been nice if they had just kind of like been a bit more creative in how they used the Orcs and actually given us more lore on chapters that don't get more attention. But I do hope your son enjoys the new edition. But I'll be interested to see how this box does, because it's the models are a bit dull. Models are a bit boring, I think, compared to previous editions. But it is Ultramarines and it is Orcs, so we'll see. But like, yeah, that is, I mean, as nice as the banner is, unless you really need it, I don't know if you'll spring for it. I thought the Orcs were gonna hunt down the demons now. What happened to that storyline? On Armageddon, I think there'll still be a little bit of that. I think there'll definitely be a bit of a clash there. You know what? We have got one other video I did want to watch, hence the title of this video, because we have got to decide the fate.
40,000. You are invited to join a Warhammer 40,000 global battle. This summer, your first games of the new edition can help shape the lore of the 41st millennium. War rages across Armageddon as a vast Ork Waaagh clashes with a vengeful host of Space Marines, sent to relieve the beleaguered Imperial defenders of the world. You can join the fight and help decide the fate of a vital hive city, Deathmire. Play your games at home and submit your results online, or join the action at your local Warhammer store. The campaign will run for 3 weeks from the 22nd of June. Battle over 4 locations in the city, 1 each week, with the 4th decided by events in local Warhammer stores. Play games with your new Armageddon set, or any other forces you like. After the dust settles...
Wait, local Warhammer stores? Guys, can you let me know in chat? Are any of you allowed to play in your Warhammer store? Because every time I've gone into a Warhammer store, like when I was a kid, you could do, but nowadays you literally aren't allowed to play.
The hive will stand or fall. Your battles will have decided the fate of a city on one of the most important worlds in the galaxy. Not only that, but each week the side in the ascendancy will be rewarded with new model reveals for their faction. And at the end of the campaign, the victors will unlock new rules for use in games of Warhammer 40,000. By taking part, you'll also qualify to win one of 40 1,000-point armies of brand new Orcs or brand new Space Marines. The battle starts on June 22nd. That's the Monday after you've gotten your hands on your Armageddon box. You'll need a My Warhammer account to take part. Soldiers of Armageddon, make ready.
Shit, sorry, chat. I did it again. Yes. Now I have to look at muted comments for those 5 minutes. Sorry, everybody. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty cool, right? That's a pretty cool thing. They've done this before. They've done it before where you can submit your results online or in the store, and therefore you can actually influence the direction of Warhammer lore. That's pretty cool. I don't know how impactful this will be because it's just over one hive city, and I don't think it's one of the more important hive cities on Armageddon, to be honest with you. So, fair enough. I mean, it's cool. But yeah, it is very exciting. You unlock new lore, and there's also one part of it where it says you can submit your result in store, which is sort of an interesting one because I don't think you can actually play in any Warhammer stores anymore. Like, I don't really think there's anything you can do to actually I don't think you're ever allowed to play. Like, it used to be the case when I was a kid that you could go into a Warhammer store and you could say, "Hi, can we use the table?" And they would say, "Yeah, sure, just don't be a prick about it." And then you could play with it. But nowadays they only keep the table. Sometimes they don't even have proper tables, and they just use them for demonstrating games to young people or people getting into the hobby, which is great. But I don't really understand how you're actually going to play games and submit your results. I guess it could work if you only play like 500-point games maybe, and then they set up a few places to play, or kill team games or something. Maybe it's something like that. I don't know, but it's a cool idea. But yeah, I'll be excited to see how impactful this is. Like, if this was super impactful for how Armageddon goes, that would be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool. That would be exciting. We created our own hobby club after our old Warhammer store moved to Nottingham and was replaced by a douche who only runs new starter games for little Timmies. Yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of what we were talking earlier. There has to be an element of that, I guess. Like they have to cater to the young ones, definitely. But it is a bit of a shame if you live in a city where there's not many places to play, and now you can't even play in Warhammer stores. Yeah, it kind of sucks. Not a real stream without some audio problems. That's true. In the Armageddon event, my old GWS pushed all the tables together and we all had a massive mega battle. That's cool. Did you submit that as one game though? That's where you'd have to be a little bit creative. My local store in California has people to play games. Interesting. Yeah, in the UK, I've not been to a store in recent years where you could actually play games, I don't think. Yeah, and actually, it's sort of, it's one of those things where it was kind of gradual, right? Because, I mean, it was definitely going to be the case that if you were a store manager, it would be mildly annoying to have people come in asking to play games, and then they're very loud and boisterous and maybe scare away some customers. That's true, but at the same time, it is kind of sad because I'm thinking less so about the UK. But I used to live in Hong Kong, where in Hong Kong it's incredibly expensive and there's so few places to play, especially if you're in some parts of the city. So the Warhammer store might be the only place you and your mates can actually play games. And so back when I was there, you could play there. But if they've got rid of that, for example, it's a bit of a shame. And I did always get the vibe that he was happy to let people play there, but he wasn't. Well, he was okay with it, but he wasn't very happy about it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Let's open a store where people can play 40k. I'll be a financial backer. That'd be cool. That would be cool to have that one day. That's a dream. I think it's tough. Like there's the place where I play in London. It's called Bad Moon Cafe. They've done super well, and they have opened a second location. But I think generally speaking, it's very difficult because you got to have the right location, and obviously, like Warhammer games take up a lot of space, right? Like they compared to like Magic the Gathering, which requires like one table to have two games going on. Yeah. Could you do a retrospective stream for newer fans, how the lore progressed through editions, along with your thoughts, sprinkling in personal anecdotes from your reading / playing where relevant? That does sound like a lot of fun. I think so. I don't know if I'll do that anytime soon. Like, there's a few things I'm working on first, but that would be really good. I think Arbitrary and done some videos like that if you're interested. But I'm slower at making videos than most. I used to do 40k battles at my local store, big battles too. Store owners didn't mind, made money too with last minute purchases. Yes, I remember back in the day, not in the store, but there was another place in Hong Kong we used to play, and we used to pretty much solely play just mega battles. All we do is just everyone brings 2,000 points and then 4 players each side. It was a good time. Extremely rare Sandman crash out. Yes, I appreciate that. I will say, yes, I will repeat, in my defense, I don't often moan at Games Workshop on this channel. Not because I don't think you should, or I think there's anything wrong with it. I just don't do it very often. Which means when I do it, I'd like that to be remembered. I'm not kidding. I'm a multi-millionaire, and I'm all. Well, hey, I mean, message me on Discord, mate. We'll see what we can do. The Hexagrammaton we need to stream on. Yeah, that's true. I think that I'll probably not do the Dark Angels again for just a wee bit, because there's a bunch. I think there's actually a bunch of Legions I've not really done before. And the last couple of streams, Games Workshop keep releasing big videos before I go live, and so I'm like, you know what, I'll cover the new lore whilst it's hot and exciting. But yeah, there's a bunch of Legion videos that I've done that me and Ben have done some work on, so I'll do them first, or streams, I guess, as it were. Hong Kong, what? Yeah. So I lived in Hong Kong for a couple of years. I never ran into Robert Rath, who is he's a Games Workshop Black Library author who lives in Hong Kong. But yes, I lived there for a couple of years. It's a good time. So next week, next stream will be Sunday. Yeah. I feel like them calling it IP instead of lore sums up the whole edition. Yeah, they call it IP, they call us customers, and it's like, well, I just feel like, I don't know. I don't get the sense that you're as hyped as you say. I think, yeah. It's a bit. We'll see. I guess. I won't edit this stream down, but I will unlist it because I or it won't have much longevity, but also because I don't like the channel to have like a negative face to it. I would like people to think I'm generally speaking hyped, but at the same time, it's like if I do have an opinion, I feel like I should give it. Random question: can you speak Canto then? Sorry, mate. No, I can't. Sorry. I remember the 25th anniversary. The store gave out raffle tickets for playing and buying. We had a big joint Lord of the Ring battle for Gondor. Good times. Good times. I remember my first time going to Warhammer World, and they had Minas Tirith there. And my brother and I, we basically just spent the whole day, because it was like, I can't remember why we were there. It was like a school day. I remember it was one of our birthdays. And we basically spent the whole day just setting up our models. And then by the time we had like one turn, it was time to go home. And then we went home. Good times. Old Man Sandman. I've started something there, haven't I? Old Man Sandman could do live book recordings at his new shop. That would be fun. That would be fun. I don't trust people that are only positive. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, it's to be fair, either way. Like there are some people that will like, I don't know, see some genuinely awesome new lore and be like, this sucks, and you're like, well, all right, whatever. But at the same time, I do get a bit concerned when people will shut down others who are just upset about a thing. Like, you are allowed to just not like something. That's also true. Sandman, I begin to feel we are the only big fans of Abaddon and Big E. So much hate for both amazing characters. You can't come up with this stuff nowadays. Yeah, I think you're right. So many people do give them hate. I think that like with the Emperor, I've said this a few times on the channel. One of the things with Big E is that for the people that say they hate Big E or they find him really boring, I'm just gonna, or they find him really evil, I'm just like, how do you enjoy it? How do you enjoy the setting? Like if the Emperor's, like, for example, right, when people talk about how the setting is doomed and everyone's going to die, like that, and the settings, it's a setting, not a story. That was Games Workshop's methodology for like up until like 2018, and Games Workshop nearly went bankrupt. Now it's an incredibly successful company, but it did nearly go bankrupt for a few years there. They famously squashed fantasy. So like, if you're not going to give the Emperor any props, and there's so much about the Emperor storyline that you don't know, it's easier to give them the benefit of the doubt than I think people expect. But yes, Christian and I did a video backing Abaddon, or stream backing Abaddon, so yeah, check that out if you're interested. I feel like many newer fans like myself don't really feel the significance of Armageddon, and was hoping they'd give us something to sell us on a little more today. But honestly, to me, it doesn't feel any different from any of the other million planets that get lost every day. Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I don't think that... Yeah, I think even if Armageddon is lost, I mean, what happens? What's going to happen for the Imperium? It's just, it will be embarrassing. I mean, that's basically what they say in the stream, where, they talk about how the world produces a lot of machines. That's cool. But then they talk about how the Imperium has been fighting over it for so long, it would be like kind of embarrassing to lose. And you're like, I guess that's true. But you can sort of make that argument for like most worlds, right? Like, yeah. My take is Big E is the most human of all. He meant well, he fucked up, he tries to get shit together, he used what he had, didn't go as well as he thought. Fair enough. I think a lot of people still prefer 40k to be a setting, not a story. I don't know, like half of the Law Crimes crew prefers that. I don't know, to be fair, it depends how they're defining it, but I think generally speaking the Law Crimes guys want the lore to progress. I'd have to ask them. We'll see. Like, to be fair, like Pancreas is a real exception to the rule, because he's very much his own man. And so he likes Eldar for one, but he's also like, he doesn't he's like, he doesn't, I think he's read the first Heresy book or something like that, and he hasn't read much more because he's like, it's just not his thing, which is totally fair. To be fair, John Blanche was the one who inspired me to become an artist and made me fall in love with the setting. Legend. Oh, nice. I got a fair bit of free stuff just for showing up, playing, and being part of the community. Now they just want to make a profit without community support. Interesting. Ironically, I may actually get my hands on some of the Armageddon lore first. We will see. We will see. But I can't promise anything yet. Did I hear that right? That the customer in the interview refers to us as customers? Yeah, Phil Kelly. Yeah, I mean it's yeah. I don't know. I before the stream started, before the video started, I gave him like a bit of praise. Now I'm mildly regretting it. We need more tower lore. That'll make people happy. Well, I mean, Phil Kelly's the man for the job. But yeah, I mean, again, it's sort of bravery with a lot of stuff. So like, this is another good example where Phil Kelly, he wrote War of Secrets, terrible novel, but one aspect of the novel that was quite good was the lore around Shazo Case, right? And Case basically takes on an entire Dark Angel's successor chapter by his own in a Ghazghkull battlesuit. Very epic scene. And like after that, when the campaign, and then the Codex talks about him, it's like he just sort of returns to the Tau Empire. And in the book, the discovery in that novel is that Case was basically being kept in a wake for like a century and in a state of like almost torment. And he kind of he's already the monarch, the lone warrior, so he sort of doesn't get along with anybody. And then he sort of like runs away at the end of the book, and then he just kind of returns to the Tau Empire in the next Codex. And you're like, oh, well, that's a bit lame. Why didn't you guys read the book? Same with Abaddon. What should he have done? If you are a dude against an enormous empire, you have your reasons, then what are you supposed to do but get your hands to some chaos? Yes, I think that's right. Welcome. Things can progress without ending. Yes, that's very true. I mean, and like, to be entirely fair, like even if the setting did end, right, which I don't think it ever will do, but even if the setting did end, they can still write books within the setting, and they can still sell the setting. Lord of the Rings has finished. Lord of the Rings finished a long time ago. They still sell Lord of the Rings models. It's not a problem. If you were in charge of the new Armageddon campaign, how would it play out? It's a good question. I think part of the problem that I have with it is to that question is it's sort of just like the lack of creativity around the whole fucking thing. And I think that there's just not really a lot going in. I think the things that I would have changed are I would have made people get much more excited for the fact that the Salamanders and the Blood Angels have returned. So even though Salamanders appear in a previous War of Armageddon, right, there's still so much lore around the Salamanders yet to be explored, right? Like I think that Tushan is one of the most interesting characters the Salamanders have to play with, and also I think that the last Salamander supplement sort of it ended with this bit about how they think they've got sight on the next artifacts of Vulcan, which basically pushes forward their lore for Vulcan's return, but not in a way that like necessitates his return in the near future. So there's stuff like that they could have pulled in, which would have been absolutely fine. It would not. I don't think it would have overwhelmed people. You basically would have had lore around the Salamanders have returned to Armageddon because they've heard there's a relic there for them to discover or whatever, which would make sense a bit more given Vulcan's connection to the War of the Beast, right? And so you have there's lots of things like that you could do, but I'm not like spitballing here off the top of my head, right? There's so many things you could go with in terms of like the actual Ork lore. Like I think that I would have played directly from Warlord of Warlords, which is a really good book, which ends with basically Ghazghkull creating a second in command, and how he's trying to like use the Imperium to kind of train himself to be better. And you can have like I would have had Ghazghkull. I would take the focus away from the Speed Freaks. I would take the focus away from the Goths. I would do something new because everybody is under Ghazghkull now. And you could have had. It's tough to come up with on the fly, but you know this isn't my actual job. So like I would try to come up with something a bit more creative than just them utilizing some teleporting technology. It's I think that from this point forward, what I would like to see, or what I hope to see, I would like to see some big named characters come to Armageddon. I think there's a good chance we see a Mephiston, or a good chance we see a Dante coming to Armageddon. I think that would be that would make things a lot more interesting. And for the Orcs, I think that Ghazghkull Helbreck would be good. Ghazghkull Grimnar would be good. Yeah, any of those would be a really good time. I think that like one of the things with the Black Templars and Space Wolves being on Armageddon that's quite interesting is that Gilliman has given the Space Wolves and the Black Templars permission to go above and beyond like the 1,000 Space Marine limit, and so they're kind of like pseudo mini legions at this point, right? And I would have that. I think that should have been a huge thing for Armageddon. The idea that you've basically got like an almost legion-sized army of Space Wolves being deployed to Armageddon. All of a sudden, people are going like, "Oh shit, here we go!" And then you can have the Orcs be a bit more of an overwhelming threat, and it not seem like that's too much of a problem, right? Because Ghazghkull has got too many forces under his control for a smattering of Space Marine chapters to make a difference, especially when it's not even like the whole chapter attacking, right? And I think, what is it, 15 chapters at this point? And so I think that. Yeah, I would have done something. I would have gone bigger. I would have gone much bigger, I think. But yeah, it's. I am being honest with you. Like, it's tough to come up with on the fly to what they should have done. But I would have spent a few nights thinking about it. Will you ever do a showcase of your Dark Angels? Yes. I can do. I mean, it's the age old thing. I have my pile of shame that I'm very wary of, so I'm ashamed of that. But yes, there's definitely a lot I'll do one day. I think one of the things I need to do is I'm streaming on Twitch now. If you haven't followed me on Twitch, please do. And I might choose a day a week where I just paint, and then we can just paint and chat lore, and then that would be a good way for me to guarantee I crack through some more models. I think Valrak said 13,000 to 15,000 Space Marines are there. See, I would have gone way bigger than that, I reckon. I just finished Belisarius Call the Great Work, and when he is talking to the Shard, it refers to the Emperor as a weapon, and the war in heaven is still going on. Could the Emperor be an old one's weapon? It's an interesting question. I've seen that question posited a few times, like in the community. I forget the name of the Catan Shard, but yes. So what you're talking about in terms of let's break that down. So in terms of the war in heaven going on, the war in heaven is still going on because in the same way that the Horus Heresy is still going on in a sense. Like the Necrons and the Eldar are still enemies. No, none of them was ever properly defeated, and so the war is still going on in that sense. The Necrons still seek to take over the galaxy. As to whether the Emperor was a weapon created by the old ones, it just doesn't really work with what we know about the Emperor and the timeline. In terms of him being described as a weapon, I think it's probably more of a metaphor to him being like a weapon of humanity, because that's probably how they see him. And in terms of him being created by the old ones, the timeline isn't working there. So there's about 60 million year gap between the death of the old ones and the creation of the Emperor. The only way I think that the Emperor would be a weapon is if humanity was a weapon. I think you could lean much more into the old ones playing a role in the creation of humanity, but which is definitely a thing you can lean into. But then really the Emperor, the humanity is the weapon, not the Emperor. So I think it's more of a metaphor to us, that one. I don't think there's any way there's not any like good theories I've ever heard as to how the Emperor could be a weapon of the old ones, because it just timeline wise isn't gelling. You're a bit out of sync. The end times might not be the end at all. One side wins, and whoever does will have to put up with all the other factions in the galaxy, and who knows, maybe the defeated rise again. I mean, I think if there was ever to be an end times, it would be because Games Workshop want to reboot the setting or do like an Age of Sigmar and like completely change it on its head. Is there anything interesting on Ulanor worth fighting over? Just produce a lot of tanks, and I guess the Orcs are going to have a connection to it because it's their home world. Primax returning. You a fan? I am a fan of Primax returning, yeah. I want to see the Armageddon be incredibly high stakes. So, like, have important characters die. I would like the Orcs to win and lead to them in a position to threaten the Imperium much more significantly. That would be cool. Yeah, I would giving the Orcs a big win would just be awesome. What is the schedule for Twitch streams? It's currently blank on the Twitch page. I don't currently have a schedule. I'm just sort of streaming. Like if I play any games, I normally just go live anyway, because I feel like if I'm gonna play a game, I might as well go live and talk to some people about Warhammer lore, because normally I'm playing Space Marine 2. But yes, maybe I will try and come up with a stream. I feel like the whole issue with this is summarized as the difference between IP versus lore and fans versus customers. Yeah, I guess. Does the timeline up for Alfarius being the false Primarch? No, I'm afraid not. So Alfarius would have been created, well, he would have been created, I think, a few thousand years after the heresy at the very least. So, yeah, because we know that Belisarius Cawl took a long time to make him. But he is very old. I love Gilliman, but Gaz and Abaddon need to show they're a threat and a major one. Otherwise, what are we doing? Yeah. I mean, also, if they retcon the Ragnar lore, what's the point in retconning the Ragnar lore if you're not going to have him be a Primarch level, right? Hey, mate, did Rogel Dawn's warp powers influence the fight with Fulgrim in terms of nerfing his warp powers? I don't think it's more like that. I think it is more... when we say that like Rogel Dawn is the Praetorian and that's like his power, it's more about the fact that he has an understanding of his brothers, that he's able to manipulate them in a very clever way. So like after his fight versus Fulgrim, he kind of talks to Sanguinius about it, and basically implies that he doesn't think he'd beat Fulgrim in a straight fight. The point is he got Fulgrim to retreat, and that was huge. I really loved both the Arks of Omen and Vigilus campaign lore. Yes. And those are pretty recent. Yes, they were pretty recent. I feel like 40k is in danger of lost TV syndrome, where they just come up with infinite interesting premises and mysteries to hook you, and then never tie them together or pay off. I mean, Arks of Omen was like the best. Like, because Arks of Omen tied itself to both heresy lore and 40k lore in a very clever way. It was exciting. It was amazing. Everybody loved it, right? That was a really good time. In terms of like modern, like in terms of like every campaign needing to be that, it's not that, like, I don't want it to be misconstrued as me thinking that like every campaign has to be completely galaxy changing, but it's just like, this is just, it's just so uninspired. I think this campaign, it's just not particularly interesting at all. My Discord channel still hasn't notified you when I'm live. This is the Sandman Inferior failed me. Let's have a look. It does look... oh, actually, yeah, that hasn't updated at all today. Interesting. I'll check it out. I don't know why it's done that. Is the other part of the bot still working? Can I summon the Emperor? I can summon the Emperor. Yes. All right. I'll take a look. I don't know why it's done that. Anyway, all right. I think I'm going to call the stream there. But thank you so much, everybody who joined me for this. This was a lot of fun. I will not edit this one down, but I'll probably unlist it just because it'll probably be out of date relatively quickly. And I try to have a more positive face, but yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to be honest. Anyway, take care, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me on this stream. I'll be back on Sunday, where, unless there's some new lore in the meantime, we'll be talking about salamanders. But take care. Thanks for watching this stream. If you could help me appease YouTube's machine spirit by liking and subscribing, I would greatly appreciate it. If you couldn't make the stream live but want to ask me a question anyway, consider posting it in our community tab and I'll answer it next time. To support the channel, click the join button below, which will give you access to more content, and you can drop into the members Discord where all the coolest Terrans hang out, away from the watchful eyes of the Inquisition. Thanks for joining me, and until next time, I wait for you and I forgive you. Good night.